Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. I'm your host, Joe. I run a YouTube fan project called Wind Waker Unflooded. Y'all know the drill. If y'all are watching this channel, y'all probably know who I am and what Wind Waker Unflooded is. It's a 3D modeling project where I'm reimagining Hyrule in the style of the Wind Waker. And I've realized that I wanted to replay the game, refamiliarize myself with the lore, and so here we are. Without further ado, don't be afraid to tap like and subscribe and click that bell icon. Ring the bell down below. How about that? That is my instruction to you. Ring that bell. Like and subscribe. Because I do all kinds of stuff on this channel. I do the fan project, but I also do a podcast, and we have so many great special guests. I'm doing these videos right now. I'm doing a playthrough of the Wind Waker, and I'd love to, like, after this is done, do a playthrough of some more Zelda games. I love Zelda, and I love all the games. And what we have here, it's not just a fan project, but it's a pocket of the Zelda community. And so I would totally be interested in just kind of like just making more Zelda content. You've done well, Joe. It would seem the gods have acknowledged you to be a true hero, but this does not mean your trials have ended here. Once you take your first step into the world beyond the ring of light you see shimmering in the waves before you, your true trial will begin. I love that. Are you ready, Joe? I am ready. I'm ready, man. I'm so ready. Let's go. Let's do it. I'm excited, man. Oh man, we're going below the ocean. Um this is when that game like takes a turn, right? Um, like, all right, we're going underwater. I wonder what we're gonna find here. I wonder what we're gonna see. Um, Man, I don't even remember like my first time like going through this, but like it's such a cool story point. You've been hearing about this lost kingdom throughout the whole game. The game started with the legends, and then you realize as you go below the ocean, that there's a whole world, of course, that's been lost to the flood. This whole world that is just sitting there. These islands that you've already gotten to know so well and love. Dragon Roost Island and the Forest Haven and Outset Island and Windfall. Those are all part of that ancient kingdom. If only we could have seen how the islands connect to the world below the Great Sea. Seen what this full version of Hyrule could have looked like. If only we could have explored it. If only someone was working on a 3D modeling project to tie it all together. If only. Excuse me. I mean, it's so ambitious, and just that thought, it's like, oh, this is the part of the game that just makes you go, yeah, I want to see more. I want to know more. You are probably wondering where we are, aren't you? Unfortunately, there is not enough time for me to explain it to you now. Once you are able to strike down Ganon with the item you obtain in this castle, all will be made clear to you. Trust in my words. See what awaits you in the castle. It's great. It's so dramatic, man. So dramatic. I mean, yeah, let's just take it in for a second, because this part of the game, you look out and there's this beautiful landscape, the lake, the forests, and it's funny, right? Because I've been working on this modeling project, so I look out into the distance and I don't just see, oh, there's a river over there. I see, oh yeah, that's the river going to, if we're saying that this castle is facing north, then it's like I look over there and that's where Great Fish Isle will be, and you'll be able to see that in the distance, a restored version of it. I see those trees over there, and I know that I've replaced that with a fort in my version of the map. I look over there. There's that little part of, it's kind of a peninsula jutting out into the lake, and I've modeled a school that will go there. But just at this part of the timeline, of course, Ganon invaded the castle. I'm saying that Castle Town was right here under the castle. On the lake, but it was all destroyed. All of these things were destroyed as a part of Ganon's invasion. So we look out and we just see just the mountains and just the forests. But there's more even in this part of the map that could be seen. And so I'm so excited just to get into that with my project. I'm very excited by it, and just like I still feel so in touch with the inspiration. I mean, this is something I've wanted to see for years. And so it's just replaying this game now. It's just I feel like I'm in touch again with all of those feelings of like, yeah, like I do want to see that world developed. I want to explore that in the way that I can explore the Great Sea. Oh man. And here we are, Ganon's invasion. He managed to get into the castle. Um, there he is, the king. There's the princess. Oh, I love that. I love the paintings. It's great. And just here we are in this frozen version of Hyrule Castle. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you just feel like, I mean, you're literally stepping into the past, right? And everything that comes with that. Oh, man. It's great. It's great. It's just great. I mean, I'm assuming that these monsters were sent pre-flood, right? That's the theory, is that like the time was frozen around the time of the flood. And I know that like lore-wise, you're like, well, like have Ganon's forces changed since then? Like after the flood, would he have changed his army of Darknuts and Moblins? And I think it's just like the game only has so many enemies, and it makes sense to put Moblins and Darknuts here as a gameplay like thing. Like maybe there were different designs, maybe things have changed, but I don't know. I don't know. Like there could be like a break in the diegesis there, but like it is a game and it makes sense to have recurring enemies, even if it's weird lore wise. But like I do like it lore wise, and I like the idea that like Ganon's forces like pre-flood were Moblins and Darknuts, right? That he was in control of monsters and had these knights. I like the idea that they're transformed versions of knights, right? That like they were knights fighting for Hyrule, and then they were turned into monsters by Ganon's magic. Um, in the same way that the knights and soldiers were mind controlled in A Link to the Past. But that's just my theory. That's just a theory. um, oh man, I miss Matt Pat. I love Matt Pat's channel. I know I've done a video on this channel before responding to one of Matt Pat's Zelda theories. He came out with one a couple months ago, and I was just like, I was not. I mean, I was negative towards the theory, not towards the creator. I have no beef with Matt Pat. But I was like, come on, like you're talking about Wind Waker now, this game that I love. I'm the biggest Wind Waker fan on the internet, and now you're talking about it. I'm like, I feel like you're missing stuff. But also, it's like that's just part of the conversation. It's like you're really close. You're responding to a lot of things that are true, but there's more. We can keep going further. Oh, this is great. Oh, it's so dramatic, right? And I think it's like there's a musicality to this. Like you go in and it's quiet, you know, um, it's quiet. Um, like the beat has yet to drop. Oh, and like this is not just a castle. This is built as a cathedral, and of course we go downstairs and we find the Master Sword. Like this is an analog to the Temple of Time as well. Like I think this is Hyrule Castle. I know a lot of people think that the Temple of Time from Ocarina of Time became Hyrule Castle. Maybe that's a valid theory. To me, like at the very least, I see them as separate structures. But this is functionally like this is like a temple, and here we are, and there's stained glass windows, and it's this monument to the past. It's a cathedral built for the king, and for this old kingdom. To perceive such a puzzle and decipher it is no small feat. Now take the sword that lies before you. It is none other than the Master Sword, the blade of evil's bane. It is the only sword that can banish Ganon from the world above. Well, don't mind if I do. Oh, yeah. And there you are, in this room. Not that hard. Oh, this is great. I think this is better than like I love Ocarina of Time's Master Sword like pulling section. Like that sequence and that scene is so iconic. Like that's great. But to me, it's like this just goes further. Just like the relationship that you have to the kingdom, maybe because of Ocarina of Time. But in comes the sunlight, and the world is returning. I don't know, man. Oh, I got chills. Just like I love this scene. Yeah, maybe I should just stop talking. Y'all know it's cool, but I'm here to talk, so I could keep gushing about it, because there's so much that's just great. It's so dramatic, and this world that was lost is now in color again, and you're a part of it. And I think that that's the thing, right? It's like there's this ancient story that now you're a part of, and it becomes real and alive. And it's not just legends anymore. It's something that you have to participate in. And maybe it's beyond you, right? Maybe it's beyond the scope of anything you thought you'd see. Maybe it's not even hardly your fight. Um, this is an interesting cutscene because he has the hero sword on his back and the master sword in his hand. Is there like a moment where we see him switch those out, or is it just going to happen like in between shots? I forget because I think it just kind of happens in between shots. But I want to pay attention to that and see if we can see that change because he still has the hero sword on his back. You got the master sword. We fade to black, and now he has a new scabbard and the master sword. And the hero sword is nowhere to be found. It's still in your... It's not even in your inventory anymore. He didn't leave it behind. But I think it's implied that he swapped it out and doesn't carry the hero sword anymore. Interesting. I mean, yeah, let's just look at these real quick, because this is just... These are so iconic, right? These are the sages of Ocarina of Time. If there's ever any doubt that this is a connected universe, like, this is a sequel to the adult timeline, where the sages came together to seal away Ganon. And the seal did not last, right? That's very clearly the Beast Ganon design from Ocarina of Time. And I love seeing these sages in the style of the Wind Waker. Saria, of course, translates really well, of course. I don't know, it's just like the Zelda timeline's a whole thing, and it gets messy, but, like, I think it's messy in retrospect. I mean, I don't know, like, Swagmaster and I talked about this. Spoiler alert, I don't know if that episode's out yet, but I'm doing a podcast Unflooded episode with Swagmaster. I'm not sure if that's already out by the time this video is going to come out. But we talked, a little bit about, like, how the Zelda timeline... He did a video on the Zelda timeline. That's great. I recommend watching it because he makes his own Zelda timeline. That's different from Hyrule Historia. But we talk about, like, just the fact that, like, when they were making the games, they had the timeline in mind. They may not have thought about, like, every game all at once, but they were at least, like, tying things together with each game that they made, and we're like, oh yeah, well, this has a previous relationship to this previous existing game. Like, they were not thinking about the timeline. They just might not have been thinking about, like, the complete timeline with every game. They might not have been thinking about all the lore, right? Like, they're just thinking about the game that each game is connected to, right? Like, Wind Waker, like, the main connecting point is Ocarina of Time. And Twilight Princess, it's also a sequel to Ocarina of Time, as is Majora's Mask. Like, those are the main points. Twilight Princess is not worried really about A Link to the Past or Wind Waker, of course, because they exist at different points of the timeline. But it's not really worried about setting up those games either. But also just because of the timeline split, like, it doesn't have to. But I mean, anyway, it's just like every game that comes out is in some way, like, knowingly connected to a part of the timeline. It's just, if you try to fit, like, A Link to the Past to, like, does it set up the Wind Waker? Well, no, but it was never going to. It's responding to, like, their games in a shared world that are both sequels to Ocarina of Time. More like Ocarina of Time is a prequel to A Link to the Past, and then Ocarina of Time got its own sequels, in addition to the A Link to the Past that already existed. So, like, the timeline is confusing, but, like, it all stems from, like, this development, like, I don't know, like, this development that made sense. Like, the developers were consciously, like, working on the timeline, and Hyrule Historia is a document of that process. The fact that the Zelda timeline is, and, like, was intentional during development. It's just, like, a little messy when you try to put it all together and go, like, well, do all the games connect to all the other games? Well, maybe not. But all the games do connect to the timeline. I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I like talking about it. There's a good video, like, breaking it all down. I wish I could remember the creator's name, but Swagmaster and I do talk about it on the podcast. So watch Podcast Unflooded if you're interested in hearing more discussion about Zelda, if you love these games and want to talk more about them. Let's go ahead and defeat this guy. All right, buddy. Let's go. This is such a great game, because it's like, all right, like, in the previous dungeon, you were fighting a Dark Knight one-on-one, and now it's just like, well, here's a bunch of them. And they are, like, separated out throughout the room, so there's parts of the room where you may only take on one at a time, but then there's, like, we just took on like a bunch of enemies at once, and I don't know. I love the way that like this handles that and kind of introduces you to like taking on just like a bunch of enemies at once. Um, it's just great because that's something that not every Zelda game does. Even Zelda games that came after this, Twilight Princess didn't have a lot of like group enemy battles. Skyward Sword only had a couple. There's like a horde at the end of the game, um, but a lot of the game is only just a couple of enemies at once. And I love the Wind Waker is more just like, no, we can throw a bunch at you. Um, it's great. That's part of what I love about the combat. Is how just like having these groups of enemies that are interesting enemies to fight, like, and they're enemies that like you can tell like are like, they think they have a good, like, their AI is really well designed. The fights are fluid and it doesn't feel like it's the same one every time, just because things change, right? They have these enemies that they have these weapons that they drop, and that like, if they can get over to their weapon to pick it back up, that changes the course of the fight. If you pick up the weapon, that changes the course of the fight. If you throw the weapon, oh come on, did that not hardly do anything? Come on, man, come on. I want to use this now. I feel like I didn't really get a good swing in. There we go. Oh yeah, oh yeah, we got the Dark Nut sword. It's huge. It's twice the size of Link. Crazy, crazy talk. Let's go up here to the oh, what do you call these? Not the rafters, but let's throw that. Easy. Now let's use his spear. Where'd it go? Yeah, here it goes. Yep. Just get another good throw in. I mean, it might be better just to use my sword, but like, it's so nice to use their own weapons against them. And I love that like the game lets you do that. That's great. That's something that just like didn't really happen again until Breath of the Wild, right? Like enemy weapons like going into your, like, they go into your inventory in Breath of the Wild, which is of course like, it's like now you have the weapon and you can take it with you. And this game doesn't let you take the weapons with you. They're restricted to the room where you fought the enemy. But like it still is that concept, and it's crazy that like it wasn't explored again until Breath of the Wild. And I don't know. It's like I think it's. I guess I do want to say, I may have said this before on the channel, but in case you didn't hear it, it's like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are obviously like they iterate on the Zelda formula and make changes. There's things that are just different. They're less linear, and you can tackle the dungeons in any order. The cutscenes they're optional and they're not happening to you. Those are both like meaningful changes in the formula that change the way you interact with the game. There's shrines, of course, as well. And where's the... Maybe there... Have I checked behind the stairs down there? I don't know if I have. Let's check that out. Let's scope it out. I want to get the Knight's Crest, please. Okay, here we go. Let's go. Yeah, I feel like there's one back. Yeah, there's Moblin back there. What was I going to say? I don't remember what I was going to say. But yeah, I was just talking about like how the new like Switch Zelda games are like they deviate a lot from the Zelda formula, but they're also iterating so much from classic Zelda games, and they pick up a lot from this game, like enemy weapons, like the open world. And Wind Waker is a linear game, but like once the Great Sea opens up, you can just kind of go anywhere. And maybe you don't have the items to go like, to do everything, but like the world opens itself up. And like I think the Triforce quest of Wind Waker is kind of like the whole game in Breath of the Wild. And so like when I played Breath of the Wild, I fell in love with it. And it was so nice that it's like finally, it's like what I loved about Wind Waker is now this whole game. And I still love Breath of the Wild. It's a masterpiece. And I love Tears of the Kingdom. It's a masterpiece. But there are things that I wish, would go back to being more traditional. I want a story that the player participates in. And Wind Waker has that too. So that's why it's like it took some things from Wind Waker, but also changed enough that I feel like it kind of missed the balance that Wind Waker had. This game, Wind Waker, it has an open world that you can freely explore and a linear story. The dungeons are only doable in one order. Oh, and here it is, Hyrule for the first time in color. It's beautiful. Just I stand behind it. Like you look around and it's just, this is like, to me it's the most beautiful art style of any Zelda game. And just like looking around, it's like, yeah, like I so badly wanted to see a whole version of Hyrule in this beautiful art style. And yeah, just every time I look at this game, it just gives me chills and it just reminds me of everything I'm doing with Wind Waker Unflooded. It reminds me that, yeah, like, I want to see this world and more of it. And like just the fact that, like, yeah, we get to explore Hyrule in other games. We get Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword, where we do go back to Hyrule. Um, and those later games show you more of it. And Breath of the Wild really scratched that itch for me. But it's like ultimately I played this game and it's like, well, this is still its own art style. And I still want to see more of this version of the world. And I was never able to scratch that itch with other games. So that's why I do Wind Waker Unflooded. That's why I'm working on that 3D modeling fan project. It's just because, like, while I'm really appreciate that. Can we do barrier skip? I clipped in past the first barrier. Look at that. Okay, I'm standing. Oop, it's still kicking me out. Okay. I feel like if I can. I don't know if I can actually do barrier skip. Um, I'm going off of memory here. It just keeps knocking me back. But I feel like if I can get the frames right, it's like obviously I can walk past that initial barrier. I'm clipping through part of the wall that's like the visible part of the wall. It's just there's that invisible wall. But like that's, I mean, like I'd love to like show you that I can clip through that first part of the wall. I've done it before. It just keeps knocking me back. It's very precise. Should I wait for a second? Nah, that's good. Yeah, the damage barrier. I'm pretty sure that the damage barrier is lined up with the like the visible barrier, right? That like that's the same geometry. But of course there's an invisible wall as well. That like that's what I'm running into. Oh, like I think I was in it for a second. I think I was past the first barrier. That's the thing about the barrier. There's two barriers. Excuse me, this is silly because like I'm not actually gonna get past the second barrier, but I want to show you I can get past the first one and like stay there. I've done it before. What am I doing wrong? My sword. It's like I gotta get it just right. I mean, obviously you can see me like getting past the visible barrier and then it just kicks me back. Interesting. I just want to see if I could stay past it. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Let's see. Am I able to get past it? Nope. And obviously, like, I would never get past the barrier. But I wanted to show you that, like, I could still... It's not too hard to get past that first barrier. Like the invisible wall and have it stop kicking you back. But I couldn't figure out how to do that. But anyway, yeah, it's just... This is so beautiful, man. It's just, like... And going, like, onto this map, every time it's like... Oh, it's just... It's so beautiful. And I love this whole game's art style. Like, it's such a beautiful game as a whole. Yeah, and there's Gaines Tower in the distance. But yeah, it's like it's something that like I just wanted to see more of it. And I still have that feeling of like, you know, I want to see more of that world. And I'm so excited to like I make Wind Waker Unflooded not just to make it for y'all, but I make it so that I can see it. I'm so excited to keep working on it just to fully realize it. And that really is just like it's been so rewarding to work on it so far. You're right, and it's like I was just like where I just was like with the barrier just past that was like in my version of the map is the entrance to Castletown, and there's like a Shakespearean kind of globe style theater back there, and I don't know, it's just it's so cool just to like play this game and just kind of think about that. That's like I have the context of what I want to do with my version of the map, and now it's not just Hyrule anymore, but I can play this game in the back of my head. I'm thinking, you know, like, oh, like that's not too far from like, you know, where we put our new Temple of Time in the map, and I can play the overworld and I can be like, you know, I can get to the private oasis island, and I'm like, yeah, like in my map that's kind of Hateno Village, right? Great, it's already northwest. That's what we want. I don't think I'm going to do too much more in this video, but I want to get to the northern triangle isle because there's usually a cyclone that spawns there, and I could use that. I could use that about now because we need the Ballad of Gales. Just Y'all know me. There's a lot of sailing, and I love sailing. I love this game, and I love the built-in downtime that sailing creates. But also, it's going to save us a lot of time to have this ballad. Um, I guess I'll fill in more of my sea chart later, y'all. Like we're working on it. Our sea chart is, it's a little. It's I don't want to say it's atrocious, but like we have work to do on this sea chart. Um, so we'll get there. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out. I think it's that shadow up there is Northern Triangle Island. Once we cross into the quadrant, usually it's like it seems like loading is based like very literally on the quadrants as the player is able to see them, right? Like those blocks that the player is aware of are also like loading barriers for different quadrant specific things. Let's see, is the cyclone going to appear? Yep, there it is, right on cue. I know it's like put there intentionally that like you're going to the northwest already, and then right, and so it's like you're kind of supposed to sail past this island and see the cyclone. I think that's very intentional. But it is something that like you could miss if you go somewhere else, I think. Foolish creature who does not fear the gods, to the end of the sea with you. Let the winds of Cyclops' wrath blow you away. I hope not. Let's see if I can get some shots in. Okay, that's one. I feel like I'm going too far to the left, which is weird. There we go. Okay. All right, we got 2 hits in. Should be one. Let's go. Easy. Let's go, Frogman. I love his design. I love the frog people. I love that we got more of them in Phantom Hourglass. I'd love them to return. That's a heck of an arm you've got there. Oh. And what an eye. No one's ever been able to spot me in there before now. Is this the only... He's called a god, like the wind god, right? Or both of these like characters, his brothers are, right? Are these the only deities that like you get to interact with like in gameplay in any Zelda game that like are actively deities? Because of course like the golden goddesses appear in cutscenes and Ocarina of Time. I'm just thinking about like characters that are called gods in the series. I'm not sure that there's another example of like characters that you see like through the course of your gameplay. I don't know. Tell me if there's another example. But anyway, this is the Ballad of the Gales. Let's go. You learned the Ballad of Gales. Wahoo! Excuse me. In the hands of a Wind Waker like you, my adorable little cyclones will be as happy as can be. If you need me to move, if you need to move like the wind over the ocean deeps, just call up my cyclones. Well, I guess I'll head for home now. See you on down the road. I love that guy. Shout out to... Is he still there in the distance? Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know he stayed there for a second until disappearing. That's cool. I thought he just zipped out as soon as the cutscene was done. But he was there for just a second. Should we do anything on Windfall? I don't know. I might end the episode here. How about that? Y'all, we've done a lot this episode. We went to Hyrule. We got the Ballad of Gales. Great part of the game. I'm so excited to keep playing this. I love Wind Waker. But, I mean, thank you all for joining me. We might end off here. So without further ado, thank you all so much for watching. But for now, I'll let you go.